What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I am excited for this week's live. And for those of you watching the replay, great. For those of you listening on the podcast, even better. Thanks for checking in. As always, it's amazing that you spend your time with me here on this. It's the most valuable thing that you can give to me. So I do not take it for granted, and I'm very appreciative and want to express that gratitude to each and every one of you. Today, we've got a pretty awesome guest on. So, quick little story. I was fortunate enough to be invited to a group, like a group Zoom meeting, where we got to meet a lot of amazing individuals who are really just crushing it in the real estate business. And from that group, I invited several people to come on board and kind of share their messaging, share what they've learned in the space. Because at the end of the day, this group and this podcast are about one thing: helping you get out of your own way in real estate investing. And it's always awesome to see different people sharing different ideas, different ways they've done that, the things they've learned. Because as much as we all tend to have expertise in our area, for each of us, it's a little bit different in what that expertise is. And so with that, I'd like to welcome our guest today. How's it going, sir?
It's going fantastic. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into it. So for everyone who doesn't know who you are, give them a little bit of background about you, what you've done. I know when you shared with me some of the details, it was pretty interesting about you getting out of your own way. So I'll kind of let you take it from there.
Sure. Well, my name's Dhon Thorton. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a short sale expert. In fact, that my shtick is I'm Don the short sale guy because I've been doing this almost exclusively for 20 years. And I anything having to do with short sales, I know we've been dominating Florida short sales for 18, 19 years, and now we're moving our business nationwide. We feel like 2023 is going to see a return of a lot of short sales. And I also share what I've learned along the way to get out of my way in the sense of paying too much in taxes and using a strategy that I've used the last couple of years now that is just fantastic about getting not paying hardly any money to IRS and do it all legally.
Yeah, always best when you can do it legally. Okay, so I want to start with this. You said you're a short sale expert, been doing it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that, because I think the general consensus for most people, or at least maybe this is a false belief, which is there aren't any short sales in the last few years, just because things have risen so dramatically in pricing that it would make it very difficult for that to happen. But it sounds like that may not be the case. So tell me more about what that looks like for you right now.
It is the case. It has been the case here in Florida.
Awesome.
I tell you, it was weird because when COVID hit, February 2020 was the last full month we had before they closed the courts down. And we got 26 houses that month.
Wow.
So even though it was appreciating very rapidly back in 2020, we still had a ton of short sales. When they shut the courts down, they did the forbearance. Then that took away any incentive at all for anybody to leave. So
Right.
that was just a completely artificial situation. Then of course, when you shut foreclosures down nationwide, anything federal, Fannie, Freddie, USDA, VA, FHA, which is what 80 plus percentage of the market, and distressed sellers from that group are no longer there. Those houses are not coming on to the market. Well, of course you're going to have a bubble. You're going to have a feeding frenzy, which is exactly what happened. So it's taken a while, but we here in Florida have seen some amazing price drops. I mean, in the last 6 months, 24%.
Wow.
Depreciation now. So it's coming down. Why I feel like 2023 is going to be more is because think of how many people overpaid for their houses during this bubble, right?
Right.
And think about people who refinanced. I mean, so many people did HELOCs and second mortgages and refinance in general just to get money to invest. And the chickens are going to come home to roost. When those prices are dropping, more and more people are upside down, and we've got high interest rates. The Fed's going to raise the interest rates probably again next month, and every time an interest rate goes up, it's 10% of the buyers are priced out. They can't get a mortgage. So all these things are going to lead to prices dropping, and listen, our economy is based on consumer spending. right? It's no longer manufacturing. It's spending. Inflation takes a lot of discretionary income away from homeowners. I mean, the general population. And when
Right.
they stop
Absolutely.
spending, then what happens? Companies stop, their profits go down. They start cutting back. They start cutting hours. They start laying people off. And then you got people who are getting in trouble and more, prices dropping, people losing their jobs. That's more short sales.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, real quick, because I probably should have done this beforehand, but for anyone who doesn't know what a short sale is, can you kind of just give a brief overview of what that is?
Yes. Basically, if you have a homeowner who cannot sell their property for a full payoff of the mortgage because the value is less than the payoff, then only way they can sell it is to bring cash to the table and make up the difference. So we call them being upside down, underwater, different slang for that. But very basically, let's say that you can sell your property for $200,000, but you owe 220. That means you are $20,000 upside down, and you can't sell it unless the bank gives you a way out, which is what a short sale is. They will let a buyer or a real estate agent or an attorney negotiate with them to allow the property to be sold for a price that they consider as is. And
Right.
then the buyer buys it, and then the bank will pay all the closing costs, all the commissions, and whatever is left over that's not covered in the closing will be written off and forgiven. That in a nutshell is what a short sale is.
Perfect. And that's good because I think when we look at the market, right? So for those of us who've been doing this for long enough, we understand what that is because we went through 2008, 9, 10 when there was a
Right.
slew of short sales, but in the last few years, I feel like you haven't heard that term nearly as much. So I think it's fascinating to know that they're still out there, that you were still buying them, obviously, for a short period of time, maybe not as much just because everything was crazy during that. It's a weird time. We're not going to count that in there, but for those of you listening, I think the key here from this standpoint is, look, even in markets that are appreciating, there's still opportunity in places like this. And a lot of times, and Don, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I would say that most people are probably not marketing in that because they don't think it's there, which means there's less competition. So there's actually an
Oh, yeah.
opportunity for most investors.
Exactly. And that's why we're being aggressive in expanding our business outside of the US. I mean, we are contacting people all the time, and this is part of our outreach, is we want to tell you, look, right now you can contract with someone, pay them a lot of money to try to negotiate, and who knows if they're any good. Listen, most people out there negotiate for realtors, and they're just trying to get the property sold so the realtor can get his or her commission.
Right.
I'm an investor. I'm looking to create a spread where I can make money. Okay. So you've got to be better than just getting it down to what you think the as is price is. You got to get it down below. So in this scenario, if we had a property that we know we could sell for 200,000 and they owe 220, we're trying to get it for 170 or
Right.
175, 180 in that area. Okay. So we're going to have to uh, get the bank to agree that the as is price for the property is not 200, it's 170. And that's really, I mean, to use a cliche, that's where you separate the men from the boys. And that's
Right.
what we do. And, even though I do have a course, I have a course on how to find short sales, how to negotiate them. I'm being upfront and telling you that, I prefer when you find someone who's upside down and their mortgage and wants to sell, bring it to me and we'll joint venture. That way it can be a win-win situation, and you can focus on what your highest and best use is, which is to get out there and find upside down property. I mean, to find distressed sellers. And when they meet that criteria, you can just say, listen, my partner, Don, he's been doing this for 20 years, helped 3,500 or more homeowners in 20 years of doing short sales, get out from under foreclosure, save their credit. And then, a Better Business Bureau of A plus since 2004, all the stuff that I can give you, and I want you to talk to my guy, and he can
Right.
help you out. And at that point in time, you don't have to worry about doing anything else because we're going to take over. Our machine is going to take over, and then we're going to sign a joint venture agreement. And then when we monetize it, then you get paid. So you've got a second income stream that you didn't have before. Leads that you would throw away, now they're valuable.
And that makes total sense. And it's funny that you say that, and I'm happy that you did actually, because I remember we got started in real estate in 2008. So right as all that was going on, but I moved out to LA and we were doing marketing there, and there was a ton of short sales in LA at the
Mm-hmm.
time. Right, it was
Yeah.
definitely a ton. And I remember I was new to real estate, like, just getting going. I had no idea how to negotiate. Every time a seller would call me, I'd be terrified, like, oh my god, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Right, like,
Right.
because it was a totally new thing for me. But I remember I met someone very similar to you. They're not doing it anymore. So it's awesome that I now have a resource like you to do that. But I remember I would just be like, yeah, I would probably get 2 out of every 10 leads that I would get was probably a short sale. And I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea even where to start. But
Right.
I think having an expert who already knows the process, because I think, if I say so, like the process can be kind of complex, right? And not necessarily difficult, but there's just a lot of moving pieces that you have to get in place. You have to get the right authorizations. You have to negotiate not just with a seller, but also sometimes with an agent, and then also sometimes with a bank.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different pieces that come in place. And so I love that you offer that as a service, because it's like, hey, I don't know all these things that I don't know, and rather than me trying to bumble through it and keep 100%, even if I have to give up 50% or whatever the JV deal is,
Mm-hmm.
we're all going to make more because you have that expertise. And I think that's something that, in my experience in the last few years of real estate, people have been, I guess I use the term greedy. I don't know if that's really the right term, but I think there's a lot of people that think, oh, I'd rather just go it myself and make
Mm-hmm.
everything versus bringing in the right partner. But what you don't often realize is that by bringing in the right person, like someone like you who knows this system and can negotiate it, well, instead of getting the house for 190, which is maybe where you got it for 170. Everyone makes more at the end of the day, which is a win-win-win. Um,
Or they want to
and I
even
think
get it.
yeah, or yeah, exactly. Or they might not even get, like, the bank just, plays
Right.
hardball and they just don't know what the
Don't
right
know how
things
to
to say in the
don't know
first
how to
place.
twist your buttons exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that's huge. So okay, cool. And I love that this is you know what, I haven't had conversations around short sales in so long. So it's very nostalgic in a way almost. um so okay, that's awesome. So let me ask you this, when
Yeah.
you like, if you were talking to someone right now who's either either a newer investor or new to short sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's for you? Is there any sort of criteria that you look at and you say, "Oh man, this is sort of the trigger point for this could be a really great deal to bring to you"? Because what I don't want either is someone just to bring you like total crap leads. You're like, "Well, this is not going to do anything." Like when you look at this, like what are some of the, I guess you'll say, criteria of you going, "Yeah, this looks like something we can work with and we can make some money on."
It's going to be difficult for us to make decent money if it's below $100,000.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So I would say 150,000 and above is better.
In
200
the
to
in the as
400
is price.
as is price. Yeah,
Okay,
200
perfect.
to 500,000 is a sweet spot.
Okay.
But we can do them for 150 above, of course. It's just that there's only so much room, right? And you're when you're saying 100. I mean, don't bring me a shack, okay? You know,
Right.
you know, and we have to be realistic, and you need to have realistic expectations as well, because the days of being able to go out there and get $100,000 discount. I mean, they're very rare, if at all. I mean, we don't even try for them anymore, and I'll tell you why. Because you can get them and you burn bridges with the bank negotiators. We're in this for the long haul. And
Right.
so we want them to continue to give us the benefit of the doubt. Okay. So if we stay in that $15,000 to $25,000 range, then we generally don't miss. The only time that we miss generally is if it's like a USD, a VA loan where their appraisal value is you're in jail for 6 months. Okay,
Right.
and you can do a value dispute, but if you miss on your value dispute, then you're stuck with that price, and sometimes the clock runs out on you, right? So I mean, I can't say that we never miss, but we hardly ever miss, just because we've gotten so good at knowing exactly what they want. We make the job so easy for the bank's negotiator, because remember, that bank negotiator gets paid a commission as well on successful short sales. So they're interested in it working, but they got to cover their tushy as well with whoever owns the mortgage, right? Because it's if you're talking to a servicing company, they don't own the mortgage. It's some
Right.
hedge fund or Fannie or Freddie that own it. They're the ones that make the decision. So that negotiator is putting his or her butt on the line, going to say, look, I think this should be approved. So if you go there and start giving outlandish stuff, first of all, they'll reject it at the servicing
Right.
company, or they won't go to bat for you, right? I mean, I'm going to give you a little bit of inside baseball here, but I mean, we're submitting 50, 80-page reports that goes over every single possible contingency, and it all runs back to this is the as-is price. And they don't have to research. It's all there for them in a way that they like it. We know how they like it, and they can say, okay, they can take that to the investor and get that deal done. So we believe that's why we believe that volume and less greed is better long term to make real nice money in short sales. That's our philosophy. There's other people out there that say you can still get $100,000 on these things. I know people out there that sell courses like that. God bless. We just feel this is the best way to do it. And we've been doing it for 20 years.
And I think that's absolutely true, right? Like, yeah, maybe back in 2009, 10, you could negotiate $100,000 off because the reality was, you needed to at that point in time, and they were desperate to take whatever they could get. Any money was better than no money, but most banks aren't in that same desperate position today that they were in then. So, and you're right. I want to point this out too. I think you're right on some of these other courses. And the thing that I find funny is I actually, a friend shared a login with me for a course because he's like, hey, like, will you watch this and just tell me if this makes sense? And I'm like watching him and talking, and I was like, I could tell just like, it was funny, just based on the wording, when the video was made and all that. This was from 2009 or 10, and he's talking about negotiating at that level. And I was like, that's fine back then, but like, good luck today. Or like you said, you burn the bridge. And the reality is, in real estate investing especially, this is a very small world. If you're newer to it, you may not think it might seem huge, but the reality is, I've been doing this for 14 years, right? So not quite as long as you, but long enough to go in and say, at some point, the players that survive this long, there's only a very small number of people that can continue to do this. And the reason is that, like you said, if you burn the relationship, there's nothing else to be had. Sure, you made a quick buck this time, but not in the future. So I think that's hugely important. Cool. So I want to, keeping us on track here from a time standpoint too. I know you said you have a way to basically defer capital gains taxes, if I'm using the right terminology, and it's not a 1031. Is that correct?
No, 1031s are dead.
They're dead. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about that.
They will be. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are two things that you can do that directly affect real estate investors. For me, because I flip, I don't hold anything long term, not a buy and hold investor. That means I was getting hit with ordinary income. Okay. So as money comes in on my flips, then it's considered ordinary income. And, I make good money at it. So if you're above $165,000, you're getting hit at 32%.
Which is huge. Because it's never about what you make. It's always about what you keep.
Exactly. And what drives me crazy is these people say, oh, I can expense everything else. Like, yeah, you can. You can also play Russian roulette, and eventually the bullet's gonna hit you, and an audit's gonna hit you, and good luck with all those expenses that you bogused out, right? So, that. But even then, you still pay taxes. I mean, if you're making nice money, I'm not talking about a newbie wholesaler here or whoever. I'm talking about people that do well. You're making $300,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year. I don't care how many things you expense, you're writing checks. The IRS. Yeah. It's just the way it is. I was writing checks, and I was as aggressive as anybody. Okay, because it's ordinary income, and so 32% of your net income's going out. And I was every single year I was doing that. I mean, my gosh, when I was making millions a year in the short sales back in the I call it the great times, the Great Recession. It was just insane the amount of checks I was writing. And so I finally wised up, and I learned about that I could run my business through a trust, which is called a non-grantor, irrevocable, complex, discretionary spendthrift trust.
That's a mouthful.
What a difference. I mean, I can take 97% of my pre-tax net income that normally I'd be 32% going to the IRS. I can take the 97%, get it into the trust where any taxes are deferred permanently. And so I can still use that to invest in other things. The money that was going out to the IRS is now staying in my trust, and I can put it out there and buy more houses and pay more expenses or whatever. So that was huge. The second thing is that this
hang on 1 second before you go to the second thing. Say the name of, because that was a mouthful of a trust title. Say it one more time and go a little bit slower, just because I want people look, I've been doing this for a long time. What you just said, I don't know that I've ever heard of that trust before. I didn't even know it existed, and I've been doing this for long enough. So I'm guessing that most of the people who are going to be seeing this or listening to this have probably not heard of this. So say it one more time, just so we know exactly what it is.
Non-grantor, irrevocable, complex, discretionary spendthrift trust.
Non-grantor, irrevocable, complex. Say it one more time.
Discretionary spendthrift trust. Non-grantor, irrevocable, complex, discretionary spendthrift trust.
Are you saying thrift or through?
Spendthrift, like you're thrifty.
Okay, perfect.
You spend money thrift like you're thrifty. Spendthrift.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so now we understand what that does. It allows us to keep you said 97%, which is amazing.
You can convert 97% of your business. Like say your LLC, you're running through an LLC. You can convert 97% of that LLC's pre-tax net income, move it into the trust, and the money that goes in the trust is considered passive income. It can be taxes on that can be deferred in perpetuity forever. Okay.
Okay. Now, is this only for real estate folks, or could this be used for any business?
Any business, you just can't use it for W-2.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right. So point number 2 you were making. Let's keep going because this is great.
Capital gains. Okay. So I'm not a buy and hold investor. Never wanted to be, but I have a lot of people who are. And anybody that sells an investment property they've had it for a little, long enough time that it's gonna trigger a capital gains tax. Okay, so again, it's around 24%, I think, right now. So if you sell a multifamily, just to keep the numbers easy, for $1 million, okay, then you're talking about a big chunk, $240,000 is going to go out unless you do a 1031 exchange. But boy, those things are tough, right?
Very tough.
You got to get a similar property under contract within 45 to 60 days, right?
Yep.
And then you got to close.
These days, it's difficult.
And you got to, exactly. And you got to close within 6 months. Okay. So I talked to an attorney that all he does is 1031 exchanges. I said, what's the percentage that work? He goes 50-50 at best.
Wow.
So, you're going to get
and there's nothing worse than thinking you're going to be fine. And then you get nailed at the end of the day because you missed by 1 day or whatever. And there's nothing at that point.
What'll happen is it doesn't completely cover. So you're halfway pregnant. You have some advantage, but you're still writing a check.
Right.
So with this trust, when you have your trust buy the investment property, or if you already have it, you sell the investment property into the trust where you're the trustee, where you have 100% power over everything. When the property is a trust expense, you throw it out there. You can list it or however way you want to, whatever your exit strategy is. When you sign that purchase and sale agreement with the buyer, you're signing as trustee of the whatever trust. Okay.
Okay.
When that property closes, that money comes in. Let's say with this scenario, $240,000. Either roll the dice to the 1031, or you got to pay the piper. Right. This way, it comes into it's like a normal transaction. It's like the tax isn't even there because it's going to be deferred forever inside your trust.
Okay.
So that $240,000 you can again use for whatever you want for more investments or whatever. You're not paying the IRS on that, and it's perfectly legal. It is complete compliance with IRS code 643.
Perfect. IRS code 643. So let me ask you this then.
Yes.
So let's say that we do this, we set this up, and we go through this process. I sell a property, I got the money in. Can I pay myself with the money? Because I know that's a lot of questions. Like, okay, am I able to use that money? Do I loan that money to myself if I need it? Like, how does that work? Because it's all great to defer money and have it in a trust, but if it's not touchable or usable, then
it's very touchable.
Other investments.
It's very touchable. It's very usable. I would say that 90% of what you need in life, the trust can pay for as an expense, as a trust expense.
Okay.
It's not like LLCs and S corps and C corps where you can't hardly write anything off. Let me give you an example. Okay, for my primary residence, if it's a trust property, I'm the trustee. Anything having to do with that property is a trust expense. The trust pays for it. Okay.
Okay.
Minor children, if you have, they're beneficiaries. School, meals, everything is paid for by the trust. They want to go, on any kind of culture, any kind of wellness, any medical. It's all paid for. The only thing you can't pay for is like fun. You can't take them to an amusement park.
Right.
The trust's not going to pay for that. Everything else is paid for. Okay. So cars, right? I have a car in the trust. Gas is paid for, trust expense. Tire changes, anything. You couldn't write that stuff off. You get mileage. That's it. That's all you can do. Like I said, so the surprising thing about this is that honestly, you don't need that much cash with this thing. So what do you do if you do need cash? I mean, because it doesn't cover food, fashion, and fun, as we call it, the 3 F's. Okay.
Okay.
So how do you get around that? Well, let's go back to that $1 million property. Let's say you sold that into the trust. Well, it's sold. It's irrevocable trust. You're selling things irrevocably into the trust. You can't pull it back out. It's the trust property. That's it. Okay. But you're not going to get cash. The trust is not going to pay you $1 million for that. What's going to happen is the trust will give you paper. It's called a demand note, but it's like a promissory note without interest. So if I do that, let's say, for example, that I had $300,000 of financing on that property, but it's whatever value we put on that property. And usually what it is what the price you picked it up at minus depreciation. Okay. Because you don't want to create a capital gains event when you sell it in. You just want to sell it at cost minus depreciation. Right. Okay. So let's say there's a $300,000 of that's pure equity. Then the trust is going to give you a note for that, which you can draw upon whenever you want. So if I say I want 20 grand, then the trust cuts me a check for 20,000. And oh, by the way, that withdrawal is non-taxable. It's not a taxable event.
Sweet.
So the few times that you do need cash, you can pull it from your demand note and not taxable. This whole strategy is designed about nothing ever being a taxable event. So it's the most brilliant strategy I've ever heard of in my life. It's a game changer for investors. Honestly, if you're an investor and you're making money and you're not using this trust, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. Because there's no reason not to.
So let me ask this. Let's take an example here, or I guess I'm thinking. So do you have one trust per every project that you do, and you have a lot of trusts, or you just have one trust and everything rolls through that single trust? Okay, perfect. And that makes things way easier from that standpoint. Now,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, think of how many people are out there that are paying all that money. They have an entity for every property they have.
Exactly.
How the accounting and the recording fee, all that stuff. You don't need that stuff anymore. It's all done through your trust. One tax return, and that's it.
Interesting. Now, does your LLC still come into play? So you still have your LLC, and your LLC is within the trust, or it's just being sold? Like, how does that work? Like,
you don't need an LLC for investment properties. They're trust properties. The rents come into the trust directly. Those rents, by the way, leases, passive income, no taxes, deferred forever. Okay. Now, if you're going to convert ordinary income, from flips, okay, then you need to have an LLC. I'll tell you how it works. It'll be really quick. Okay. I have an S corp, and I had it for I incorporated in 2003, so it's been around a long time. I've ran my business through there. I cannot use this strategy with an S corp, so I just set up an LLC. So I made the trust a 90% limited partner or member in my LLC. So I have 10% of the LLC. The trust has 90%. Okay.
Okay.
The assets that I was using to make money in my short sale business, tangible and intangible, because it's property, but a lot of it's intangible. My know-how, my systems, my strategies, the reports, everything. Okay. That is all sold to me personally, again, with paper, right? No taxable event. And then I sell everything into the trust. So now all of my short sale business, the assets are owned by the trust. So my LLC doesn't have any means to make money, to generate revenue in my short sale business unless it has access to those assets, right?
Right.
So my trust is going to lease those assets to the LLC. Okay. So what we're doing here is we are adding two major additional expenses for the LLC at tax time. Okay. First thing, let's say we have $1 million of pre-tax net income. The IRS will allow 70% of an entity's pre-tax net income to be used as a lease payment for those assets. So if we have $1 million, we'd be paying $320,000. That's 32% of that's what ordinary income is, right?
Right.
It's a lot of money. So we're going to take $700,000 of that. And that's going to be a lease payment for the assets going into the trust.
Perfect.
So now we've lowered our pre-tax net income down from $1 million to $320,000 or $300,000, I should say. I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay. So now that's an expense for the LLC, right? So that now goes out. We expense that out to the trust. So now we have $300,000 left. Well, remember, the trust is a 90% member of that LLC. It needs to get paid, right? So 90% of the remaining $300,000, which is $270,000, is going to go over to the trust as a K-1 distribution for its 90% stake in the LLC. So now we're moving $270,000 over. How much is left in the LLC? $30,000. That's what you're going to calculate your taxes on.
Perfect.
How much?
And then that money, and that's perfect too, because now that money you can also use for your 3 Fs of, hey, I need to do some things. I got to have some things that way.
Exactly.
And then,
in the meantime, that money has come in to the trust. It's a lease payment is passive income for the trust. A K-1 distribution is passive income for the trust. As trustee of your trust, you have full discretion. Remember I said discretionary trust? Okay, This is where the discretionary part comes in. According to IRS Code 643, you can declare that money that came in to the trust as passive income to be an extraordinary dividend for the trust, to be allocated to the corpus of the trust, like we talked about. And as long as it stays there, no taxes, deferred forever. Okay. Is that not the most brilliant strategy ever heard of? If you're flipping, you're covered. If you're fix and flip, you're covered. If you're buy and hold, you're covered because the rents coming in are not going to be taxed, not going to pay taxes on them. And when you sell, no capital gains, deferred forever. So you're covered on both ends, flippers and buy and hold.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So what happens now? Let's, a lot of investors I know have families. Can we, essentially, I'm thinking about legacy, right? So if I have kids, can I assign this to them at some point in time and it continues on, or does that trigger an event and they're going to pay the piper down the road?
Here's how I'm doing it. Okay. I'm trustee of the trust. My wife is a beneficiary. My 2 adult children are beneficiaries. My grandson's a beneficiary. Okay. When something happens to me, my wife is designated as successor trustee. So she'll take over if something happens to me. All of the assets, all of the money flowing in is for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Okay. The trust pays for almost everything for those beneficiaries, not to them, but for on behalf of them. Okay. For example, I paid $155,000 for my daughter's education, right? Okay. I paid for that with post-tax dollars but I didn't have a trust, right? Now the trust would have paid it as a trust expense. If she needed a car, the trust buys the car. She can drive it. You see how that works? And then it just keeps going from generation to generation to generation. That's why the Rockefellers, they formed their trust in 1914. They still have it. It's like 4 or 5 generations later. And they have like 350 plus Rockefellerites, in their trust. Right? So that's how it works.
This is cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Let's say someone's like, wow, this sounds amazing. And you're right. I want to get going. Do they contact you, or how do I find out? Like, how do I get all this set up?
contact me, and I'll be
Perfect.
glad to. So what you want to do is you can just a couple ways. I can give my phone number, I give my email, or you can just
Yeah,
go to
just
my
whatever information you want to give for someone to can reach out to you. Because, like I said, this sounds amazing. Let's figure out how we make this work. So, what's the
yeah.
best way for them to reach you?
It's 407-902-7827. That's my cell phone. You can text it. There's also I have a website. It's called https:// financial freedom, the number 4 and the capital U .now.site now.site. Okay, or you can email me directly. My first name is spelled Dohn. My company name is H as in Harry, B as in boy, funding inc.com. Either way,
Cool.
reach out to me. I'd be glad to talk to you about this and go over it in more detail. But I can tell you that it's an absolute game changer. Just give me one. Let me give you just one example.
Yeah.
In August, I had a gentleman approach me. He saw one of my videos, and he was going to sell his business for $7.5 million. Okay. He was going to have to pay $1.7 million in capital gains tax. Because business,
Just a little bit.
You sell your business, it's capital gains as well, not just investment properties. So we were able to get this set up for him. He got the trust and everything. So that $1.75 million not going out, it's in his trust, and he's now using it to buy other businesses. So he's taking the money that he would have paid the IRS, and he's using that to do whatever he wants with his investing.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Gotta love this is why these conversations are awesome, right? Because these are the things that it's like, hey, it's all fine and dandy to be an entrepreneur and make money and do real estate and all that, but at the end of the day, if you're losing a significant chunk to the government, why do that if you don't have to?
Keep your money. Don't keep it.
100%.
It's great to make money. The complaint I hear from a lot of people is that, I'm making more money, but I'm paying more in taxes. That's your choice. You now have a choice. Before, you didn't know. You just assumed that, well, I know rich people don't, they have all these attorneys, they pay lots of money. You don't. It's not. It's honestly, the system is very simple, and it doesn't cost as much money as you think. And from experience, I can tell you that, you saw that example, $1 million from your LLC, how it's down to 30, and how much you're going to pay on taxes with that, right? So
right.
For all intents and purposes, you're almost kind of eliminating taxes in general if you use this system, right? So is a one-time investment worth that? It was for me. You make the
100%.
decision. But I think any real estate investor, whether you flip or you hold, you should have it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, everything in your trust, it's 100% asset protected. It cannot be sued. Only if you're doing fraud. But that's what the spendthrift part of it is. So if someone tries to sue you, you let them know, by the way, everything here is in a spendthrift trust. You might want to check with your attorney before you do this. And or if it gets in front of the judge will say, you toss it. They can't do it. That's the asset protection that you get with this. The tax savings is great. It's wonderful. But knowing that, unless you're committing fraud or criminal activity, you're not going to get sued. Or if you can get sued, but it won't go anywhere. And so that's
makes sense.
So
yeah. Awesome. Well, everybody, this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot, right? This is something totally, I've never even heard of this before. So, Don, I appreciate you hopping on, sharing your knowledge, and going. For everybody else, if this sounds like something that's interesting to you, definitely reach out to him. Like I said, he gave you all of his contact information, so no reason not to. And Don, thank you so much for being on. Truly appreciate it. For all of you listening, watching, checking in, appreciate your time as always. Please make sure to drop a comment and say hello if you're watching the live. If you're listening to this on the podcast, we always appreciate a great review and a 5-star rating. At the end of the day, this podcast is totally free and the show is totally free. So we'll be, look, it's free because I want this knowledge to get out there in people's hands. And the best way to do that is for you to share it, let someone know. That's the small payment you can make, is leaving us a review or sharing it with a friend. So Don, thank you so much. We'll be talking soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody else. Take it easy.